It's been so long since we heard of Liam Fox. You'd think that he'd maybe disappeared off the face of the earth, but actually, recently, it turns out that Liam Fox has indeed been quite busy. Um, Turns out he's now head of a new Global Britain Foundation to try and essentially producing reports, one of which we've just been released just last week, and we're expecting two more this year, all of which are supposed to be extolling the virtues of what global Britain really means and how Britain should be taking advantage of all these miraculous, wonderful things now that it is out of the dreaded European Union. However, as you will find out as we delve into the article that we are about to go into, there's some strange conclusions in this article. In fact, this very document that Liam Fox decided to produce, its conclusions very inadvertently make the case that the UK should indeed be rejoining the European Union. Not only that, but he also talks about Britain's very, very long-standing productivity problem, but doesn't actually say how we can actually solve this productivity problem. So before we dive into this very bizarre document that Liam Fox released, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel that way. So let's get diving into this and find out why Liam Fox thinks that we might even be better off rejoining the European Union. Strange thing for a Brexiteer to write and even release. So anyway, this does come from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of Liam Fox's Brexit Prize is nothing more than a pipe dream that fails to address Britain's long-standing productivity problem. So on Wednesday, Liam Fox, grandly titled Britain's Global Commission, or the GCB, published its first of 3 reports it expects to produce this year. The document is apparently intended to define what global Britain means for business, and perhaps inadvertently looks more like an argument for rejoining the EU. It sits alongside the government's benefits of Brexit paper and levelling up agenda in trying to persuade a growing army of doubters that Brexit is not the dismal failure it is starting to look like. Whereas the Public Accounts Committee memorably put this week, is only detectable impact is increased costs, paperwork, and border delays. Much of the 31-page report is taken up by trying to reinstate Britain's productivity problem with smarter graphics, but as usual, no answers. The commission on the team includes CEOs of 4 ports, Heathrow Airport, Virgin Atlantic, as if they seem to think that Britain's exporters have somehow struggled up till now to try and find a way to foreign climes. There is also partner with an accounts Ernst & Young, and of course the Courts Bank, all chaired by Fox, a medical doctor by training. CBC's aim, it seems, is to spurn someone else into action by dangling a prize, which I assume we are supposed to believe can only be won now that we've left the European Union. It is just wrong and a pipe dream. Note that the headline figure of the 470 this is the prize that supposedly Fox is saying here in the thing you can see here, saying that raising the per capita exports of goods and services to level of Germany would mean an additional 474 billion pounds of UK exports annually. This 470 billion export boost could create up to 5.5 million export supporting jobs, which are 7% higher paying than the average UK wage. And the UK has the 19th highest rate of outward FDI per capita in the ODEC. Raising this could match to France's level, would equate an additional 330 billion of FDI output per year. Again, interestingly that they are saying, oh, if we can only match France and Germany. But hold on a second, you might think, those 2 countries are in the EU. Why on earth is he comparing if we could only match these two countries that are in the EU, but you and Liam Fox made the entire case that leaving the European Union, we would be somehow better than many of these European countries. Again, it doesn't really make sense. Note, of course, the headline figure of the £474 billion comes if we could emulate Germany's exporting performance. It's hard to see why they stopped at Germany, since further on the report lists at least 14 EU or EEA countries, all of which export far more per capita than the UK, 9 of which even more export more than Germany. These could have been suggested we try and maybe equal Belgium, then boost the UK exports, which would have been 874 billion, Holland 962 billion, or even Ireland 2.63 trillion pounds. In fact, looking at the figure down below, you can see here, you can see that France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Malta, Latvia, and 2 other 12 EU member states already shown because they too export more per capita than the UK. Apart from those struggling Eastern European members, most everyone exports more per head of the population than we do. The report does not explain why Britain was alone, unable to flourish inside the bloc. If you were making a sales pitch to join the EU, you might employ exactly the very same graph, which uses the impeccable World Bank figures to show what's possible as a result of being inside the EU single market. The commissioners were right to point out the huge disparity in Britain's abysmal export performance and productivity compared to Germany. Fox's report says that the UK productivity has stagnated, with output per hour remaining no higher than it was before the 2008 financial crash. Which are then if we're all then puzzled by this, let's try and enlighten you. So why are Germany's exports much higher than the UK's? As I've written before about the UK's very woeful record on investing in production technology, I suggest they also look outwards to look at the current website of the International Federation of Robotics, which summarizes the 2020 World Robotics Report with a paragraph about the European market. Europe has reached the operational stock of over 580,000 industrial robots in 2019, plus 7%. Germany remains the main user with an operational stock of over 200,000 units. This is about 3 times the stock of Italy, 5 times the stock of France, and about 10 times the stock of the UK. Think about it. Germany has 10 times as many industrial robots as we do. An industrial robot is defined here by the automated, controlled, reprogrammable, multiple-purpose manipulated program, or in 3 or more axes, which can either be fixed in place for mobile or used in industrial automation processes. Britain didn't even figure in the top 15 countries of the new installations back in 2018, but 6 EU countries did. Germany, France, Spain, Poland, and the Czech Republic did. In 2019, we barely even scraped into 15th place. Germany is in fact the top European user of robots and has been auto-installing the UK for at least the past 10 years, as this graph shows. Again, massively outperforming us. In fact, we've gone up, then we went down, then we went up again, and now barely looks like we might be going down again. So more investment in manufacturing alone will not solve our problems, but is just one indicator of what a successful manufacturing economy actually looks like. The level of sustained investment in German manufacturing is only possible if you have world-leading products, respected brands, and a strong demand domestically and globally, things that we just simply do not have enough of. In many industrial sectors, Germany will have companies, often several, who are either genuine and long-standing world leaders or in the top 3 or 4. Reaching that position would take decades, even assuming we had a long-term plan which would survive changes in government or even prime ministers. But having said that, Germany now has over 200,000 strong industrial robots, more than we ever have. And even if we increased the installations by a factor of 10 starting this year, it would just simply not stop us falling even further behind, lock in Germany's advantage. India and Mexico and even Thailand are even installing more robots this year than Britain. China is also way ahead with a massive 140,000 units just installed in 2019 alone. The below video shows about 2.7 million industrial robots operating worldwide in manufacturing with an average density of 113 per 10,000 employees. And in 2016, the IFR said the most emerging robot markets have a more robot density, a rate below 30. The United Kingdom has rather a low rate of general industry. Only 33 robots are installed per 10,000 employees. That would be an interesting exercise to try and ask the Commission were they to think about the high quality goods productions by Germany's tireless armies of over 200,000 productivity multiplying industrial robots are going. My guess it would end a lot up in the UK. Britain's productivity problem, of course, is not a new one. We've had far better reports in the past. One from 1975 by the Boston Consulting Group from the UK government is a prime example, and it showed the entire British motorcycle industry, very dominant in the 50s, had by that time shrunk to about 4,000 workers in total, over 100 in R&D, and managed to produce just 65,000 bikes. That's 14 employee per year. This sector had almost been wiped out by a single Japanese competitor, Honda. And from virtually nothing in 1945, 30 years later, they were employing over 19,000 people, over 2,000 in R&D, and building specialized automating machine tools to manufacture parts, with one factory producing over 350 motorcycles per employee per head. Honda's annual output was over 4 million machines. But you don't need to be accountant to realize what that means for the unit per cost of production. Honda achieved this by tooling up firstly in its home market and then a strategy of long-term investment in automated manufacturing to bring down costs, allowing them to dominate globally. Shrinking your post-Brexit home market by about 85% and erecting barriers to the EU while diverging from its regulations is making for a far more difficult, if not impossible, for British exporters who are clearly failing to invest anywhere near enough as it is. Too often, global Britain appears to be engrossed in itself, very inward-looking and thinking its exits are just frozen in time. With our international competitors now sitting around us, as we usually are, producing glossy reports and agonizing about industrial policy, or even looking at tweaking regulations or introducing tax breaks to encourage investment. There is just no sense of urgency about trying to reverse decades of decline. Johnson even tried to abolish the Industry Strategy Council that Margaret Thatcher even launched, and doesn't even appear to have any sort of strategy beyond deregulating the economy. The Brexit benefits paper does talk very blithely of levelling the suggestible and UK-made competitive advantage for both domestic and overseas contribution for outside the customs union. But with no plan to actually back it up, it's how to see how 2022 will not see us falling behind even further. The commissioners at the CGB say Britain is already an attractive place to invest. But with one of the reasons given as a relatively stable regulatory system, this is the very system that we now intend to rip up as soon as we can following Brexit. And although the report is wisely perhaps rather silent on that, Brexit can and only will accelerate the decline of Britain's already diminished manufacturing industry. There are no prizes to be won here, regardless of what Fox thinks. So overall, we've talked about this before. Britain has a massive manufacturing problem over which we have seen countless years of very poorly declined because, again, we've had governments that have just not cared to have a very single, even cohesive industrial strategy where, again, you look at the continent and there is a very, I'm sure the Europeans will disagree, but to be honest, your industrial strategies have been far better than the one being put forward by any UK governments. So here we are, sitting here saying, with a report by a Brexiteer, which overwhelmingly and inadvertently makes a very good case for rejoining the EU. Like I say, how come all these other EU countries have no problem exporting around the world, and yet we don't? And yet we struggled to try and even do that. There's deeper problems. As we've always said before, the EU was never the cause of Britain's problems. It was and always was British problems caused by British governments. And maybe that will be what people realize about all this, about Brexit. Because, again, Brexit itself was, again, caused by British government, by British things, not by EU things, by British things. And now we're out of the EU, so they can't really blame the EU anymore. who have they got to blame? There's no one else to blame but themselves. And Brexit is failing very, very badly. And as we've said before, the path back to EU membership is already laid out before us. It's just how long? And I don't think it will be long before, shall we say, we start to hear noises about rejoining the single market and customs union. I think those will be the first starting guns we hear about the initial rejoining of the European Union to begin with. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.